Avenue Radio. And welcome to our live studio audience for another exciting edition of Did You Know? And here we go with round one. Did you know?
The COVID vaccine is free and easy to get. You don't need insurance or an appointment to get your vaccine. Vaccines are available at many locations near you.
And now we're going to double the value. Did you know?
The COVID-19 vaccine is always free of cost. You can visit pharmacies, community health centers, and other health providers in your neighborhood.
And now for the lightning round. Did you know?
The Delta variant of COVID is a mutation that has health experts worried because it's twice as contagious.
Then for our finale. Did you know?
The best way to protect yourself from the COVID Delta variant is to get fully vaccinated. Get your vaccine today.
Find out more at kingcounty.gov/vaccine. Did you know?
Join Rainier Avenue Radio from 5 to midnight for Sunday evening sound sessions. Jazz from the cabinets from Big Poppy.
That's right. It's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Sergio LaCour's Love Lines.
It's Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio LaCour. Go to the phone line. Tell her who we talking to.
Sage Prince and Just My Opinion.
This is Sage, and that's just about going to do it for the first half of Just My Opinion.
K-Fox Night Beat with Nasty Ness Rodrigues.
The beat of the Fox. K-Fox Night Beat, Nasty Ness.
You know what? You're going to listen from 5 to midnight. Just turn it on and don't stop. DJ Alibaba. The Underground Surround Sound Star Time with Paul
Thanks
Pearson.
for tuning in. My name is Paul Pearson.
Sunday
And
evening
this is
sound
Star Time.
sessions on Rainier Avenue Radio. Trust me, you'll be listening the entire time from 5 to midnight. Sunday evening, your sound session on Rainier Avenue Radio.
What is the Delta variant? It's a faster, more efficient version of the original virus that causes COVID-19. It's the same virus, it's just better at infecting people. Delta is far more contagious than its predecessors. It's spreading twice as quickly as the original strain, and people who are infected with it carry around much more virus. Getting vaccinated is the best defense we have against COVID-19, including against the Delta variant. Now check this out. The vaccine is free, safe, and effective. Time to protect yourself is now. Learn more at kingcounty.gov/vaccine.
Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio traffic update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio traffic update.
Welcome to the coronavirus.
I'll take coronavirus for 100.
Fever, chills, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell.
What is staying home and isolate?
Correct.
Coronavirus for 200.
Inability to stay awake, persistent pain or pressure in chest, trouble breathing. What is seek immediate help? Correct.
Coronavirus for 500.
Crippling and potentially dead infectious disease eliminated in the United States with vaccination.
What is the polio vaccine?
Correct.
I'll take coronavirus for 700.
The Daily Double. Should I take the coronavirus vaccine?
Wait. Hold up. This is not a game. It's time for serious discussions. We have coronavirus vaccines, but not everyone is comfortable taking them. Here's the facts. Based on what has been proven about vaccines for other diseases, COVID-19 vaccine may help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. Getting vaccinated also may protect people around, particularly those at greater risk for severe illness.
You can barely see behind that thing.
Have all of the answers. Get informed, talk to your healthcare physician, and make the right decision for you. This is a message supported by the Washington
I
State.
didn't recognize you back then.
Hi, I'm Mac McGregor, the host of the You Can Make a Difference show, which airs live every Friday at 12 noon PT time. On the You Can Make a Difference show, we shine a spotlight on people who are doing amazing things to make a positive difference in our communities and in our world. We talk about what inspired them to do the work and what inspires them to keep going, how they got their start, and how you can, if it inspires you, plug into their work. We can all do something that makes Friday at noon to the You Can Make a Difference show with Mac McGregor.
Mga kaibigan, ito po si Kuya Bert Kawili.
And this is Miles Salvador from Australia.
And I'm Norb Kawili, also known as Norbcam.
Kung gusto niyo po ang latest news and events from the Philippines at the local Filipino community, Phil Radio po.
We play Filipino music and interview guests from all around the world.
And I'll keep you updated on the latest Seahawks and sports news.
Kaya always tune in, Phil Radio, every Tuesday, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Pacific Time on rainieravenueradio.world.
And in YouTube and Facebook. Salamat po.
Rainier Avenue Radio, your community radio station.
This is Cindy Gray, the host of Heartbeat Radio.
Ako po si Rolly Polington.
This is Paul Thierson, host of Star
This
Time.
is Paul Schneiderman today on the 73rd edition.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to Travelers Guide to Venus and Mars and Princess Robin. Wish you very fond mothers. Yes, no be dirty.
Your home for information about the impact of the coronavirus.
Amongst many things that's difficult about this virus is that it prevents
it's been devastating. They're really heartbreaking stories of people who have.
There isn't anyone that isn't impacted.
Shutting our schools down, including all athletic programs.
Your first-hand accounts.
We got here to check, and I found out that I was positive.
A lot of people who know me, I'm still the first person they know.
But it was almost like you were patient zero for South Seattle.
Your stories of community coming together.
Partner very heavily with Tacoma Urban League, who is doing some amazing work in response.
We're doing things for small businesses. We're giving out loans for small businesses.
And so I think it's very important that we have leaders who feel.
I cannot tell you we're calling 20, 30, 40 members.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio's celebration and education of Black History Month. You know, we do this every day of the year. And in the month of February, there is no way that we could try and celebrate Black History Month without doing it every day. So that's what we're doing on Rainier Avenue Radio. Our goal is to give you a comprehensive experience of what it is to be Black. Now, I know that many of you may go to an event from 6:30 to 8:30 on a Saturday night. It is impossible to pack the Black experience into 2 hours. That's what they give us, and so people work with it. So if you want to get a perspective of what it means to be Black, we got you all month long right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. Tonight is a special broadcast of sports, Blacks in Sports, and I'm going to let our host tell you more about what's going on here. But just to give you a peek into what's going on in the future, next week, actually, we'll be doing another Black comedy night. Which if you missed the last one, Nate Jackson was here. He was really funny. We had a great conversation. So we're doing another one of those. That's Valentine's Day. The day after Valentine's Day on the 15th from 7 to 8, we're doing a special broadcast of being an African immigrant in Black America. And so that's really going to be an interesting conversation. So join us for that one. We got a bunch of stuff. Northwest Tap is going to be here. Bob Lovelace, who plays with Aaron Jones, is in his band. They're actually in France touring right now. As soon as he gets back, they're going to come play for us for Black History Month, Bob Lovelace and friends. We're bringing a Black Wall Street exhibit. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Tulsa's Black Wall Street, I don't have enough time to tell you about everything that happened there. But we are going to have artifacts and memorabilia from descendants of Black Wall Street who have a museum called the Greenwood Gallery. This is incredible stuff that you're going to be able to see here that we're shipping up. We'll also bring some of the folks up here who would tell their stories about Black Wall Street. So much to talk about in that regard. If all you know about Black Wall Street is that, yes, it was a thriving Black community, self-sufficient. It wasn't a race riot, as they described it for 98 years. It was a massacre that happened overnight. There's a lot more to it, though, and there are a lot of stories. We will have that exhibit here for you for 2 days, and we've got more going on. Last thing I'm going to say, just because I saw Keek walk in, we're recognizing what's now old school. So there was a period of time when DJs played parties, they played house parties, they played nightclubs, they played in basements. That music was the impetus for what we now refer to as old school. Of course, the older we get, more things become old school. But we're going to have what we call just a remembrance of old school music and DJs. And so we'll have some of the DJs here who, in the 80s, played the music that is now called old school. It wasn't called old school at the time. Okay, we're going to get to the show. Again, Blacks in Sports, and I'm going to give you to your host, Mr. Juan Cotto.
Tony, thank you so much. And so wonderful to be here tonight at the Columbia City Theater, and just appreciate the work that you and Rainier Avenue Radio have done to promote these opportunities. And sports director Rick DuPree allowing us to tell the stories of our kids in the community. And then tonight, a very, very special night to look at the history of African Americans in sport. And in particular, while some African Americans were fighting for civil rights, others had already been immersed in breaking barriers in the sporting world. Sport is not just about athletic endeavors, but it is human interaction played out on a way that only allows it to happen. Nationalism, state supremacy, college glory, and a city's pride in its pro teams all create an environment whereby people and fans can enjoy the entertainment value, and also blacks in sports. Throughout American history, black athletes have had such a distinct and integral part of the black American social fabric. But over the but our lives have been greatly influenced and enriched by not only by their thoughts, but also by their triumphs, courage, and determination. And Steve, I see you found the door. Tonight, we are going to examine an issue that has occurred, that dropped in our laps last week. The former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, because he was let go of his position 2 weeks ago, after being involved in a couple of interview processes, decided to make a stand that the interview process were alleged, in his opinion, not really conducted in a manner to really allow him to participate in this job opportunity, the jobs he was looking at. In a 2019 job interview that Brian Flores had, he was alleged that the staff that showed up from the Denver Broncos was disheveled, disinterested, and legendary quarterback and general manager of the team, John Elway, was there and had looked like he had been inebriated the night before. Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, when he finally did get his first head coaching job in his first season, asked Mr. Flores to lose games on purpose with an incentive of $100,000 for each game that he lost. Then, in a most recent interview process, with the legendary coach Bill Belichick, who he had worked for in New England, Mr. Belichick sent him a series of texts, and the texts were to the wrong Brian, and he was Brian Dable, who ended up getting the position, but he was told that before Brian Flores even had a chance to interview for the position. So this is a very, very timely and interesting subject. We're going to talk tonight about what, in my opinion, was a really interesting statement by Sal Paolantonio of ESPN. He talked about the role of NFL head coaches. And in his book, How Football Explains America, Mr. Paolantonio talked about the fact that a head coach acts as a father figure, a leader who manipulates and maintains a standard of excellence for the community that he represents. The embodiment of this are in the legendary coaches of the 60s and 70s, such as Vince Lombardi, Don Shula, and Chuck Noll, whose success, wisdom, and legacy have impacted the communities they worked in for a whole generation, now even 2 generations. The 80s, along with the technical revolution, brought us innovators mixed in with old school flair. Bill Walsh, Jimmy Johnson, and at the end of the decade, Bill Belichick would not only lead organizations, but manage a change in rosters in each year with free agency. Today, the game is moving faster than ever. The players are bigger and stronger, and the contracts are far more lucrative. And in the growing demands of the traditional versus the old school coach, the demands of coaching have changed. And tonight we have different people who we're going to speak to about a variety of different processes. We've broke this into 4 different processes this evening. We're going to talk about coaching first. Then we're going to talk about the hiring practices and what would amount to a fair and equitable hiring practice. We're going to talk about the role that the media plays in this whole process. And then we're going to talk about something that we don't really think about, but really integration. And Jackie Robinson and his monumental stand of making Major League Baseball, has that been good for the whole sport? When Jackie Robinson was ended up playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers, 4 years later, a whole league that was owned, run, and operated by African Americans collapsed. And we're going to examine that and ask some questions about that. So for the next 2 hours, we hope you enjoy this. And up on stage with me are some distinguished guests. We'll go all the way down there to the gentleman at the far end, my right. And if you're watching this, it's to the left of the screen. That is Al Roberts, who is a legendary coach out of the Seattle area. Coach Roberts coached at the University of Washington on the first Rose Bowl team with Don James. And I know he started before that. And he actually coached special teams for several NFL franchises. Currently is coaching at O'Day High School. Yes. And he's been there for a little bit more than a decade now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. 10 years.
So great to see you.
Thank you.
In the middle is Kellie Rodrigues Currie, and she is a professor at the Seattle University School, and she'll tell us more about the details of what she does there in sports management. And then to my right, or if you're looking on the screen, just to the left of me, is one of the best athletes in the history of the city of Seattle. This is Anthony Allen, Garfield High School, University of Washington, and a member of the 1987 world champion Washington Redskins. The three of you, welcome so much. And Al, I'm going to kick it off to you. What is the current role of a head coach in the NFL right now?
The father figure is a part of it, but basically you're the vision guy. You set the vision. You set the vision. You're the major leader, and you try to empower the rest of your coaches to run the system. I have to sit there and pick out the defensive coaches, the offensive coaches, and I have to make sure I have the right type of guys to relate together. There's some guys that can't communicate on the table. Some people can't communicate football. They know it, but they cannot communicate it. So the head coach has to set up the vision. He sets up all the jobs. He sets up all the organization that makes the program go. And then I sit back as a head coach and I watch it. I'm responsible for every little tick that goes. And my job is to solve problems as it go, because we're going to have problems. My job is to solve problems. So sometimes some NFL coaches that have a staff of 18 to 20 people, a coordinator over each, 7, 8, 9 guys behind each coach. And the coaches have to do their job behind the coordinators. But I hold the coordinators responsible for their area, and the coordinators hold their individual coaches responsible. So it's a major deal. But basically, when Don James was there, you saw him up on a deal, and he just looked down and he was watching the coordinators. He was coaching the coaches. Some coaches, like John Gruden, would come down and he would give you the job, then he would come and take it. He would give you the job over here, then he would come and step on your toes and give it. Now, and some coaches did not have the empowerment to do their job. You coach defensive backs, but actually the other guy over here is going to coach you, and he's going to look over your shoulder and eyeball you. So that's some of the problems you have with coaching. But again, my job is to set the vision, set the pace, set the stage, and this is where we're going to go. We're going to go like this. Give you an example of changing visions. The Raiders, remember John Gruden was the head coach?
Absolutely.
He set the vision. Now he gets fired. Now what vision are we going to follow? So now Sashi has to come in and say, we're going to change the vision, or guys, you know the vision that John was setting, which is not my vision, but let's try to do it anyway. And it's hard to keep that. But he has to set a vision, and he has to have the ability to get it done. Before I get off, I'm going to talk too much. You remember when the head coach at the New York Jets, I'm forgetting his name, Bill Parcells. Remember, he said, I want to cook the meal, right? But I also want to go shop for the groceries. He said that. So if you're a head coach and you have to cook the meal and you have no choice of groceries, what kind of meal are you going to have?
Shopping for the groceries in terms of being the general manager and being able to attract the right players.
Yes. These are the groceries I want. Bang.
Let me ask you another question. Let's go right to the foundation. If I'm a young person, I'm 23 years old, I played a little bit of football. And I believe that I can be a head coach. How does one start the pathway to becoming a head coach?
Okay. First of all, if I don't know you, and if I don't know of you, what I'm going to try to do is get a bunch of young guys. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to try to model for them. The next thing I'm going to do after I model for them, I'm going to mentor them. And after I mentor them, I'm going to monitor. Then I'm going to motivate. Then that from that becomes the multiplication. So if you don't have the opportunity to be modeled, mentored, motivated, you won't have a chance. Give you a great example. The young coach at the Rams right now, you know how long he's been in the NFL? He's 36 years old, just under 40, and he's been in it for 15, 20 years. When he was an 18, 19, 20-year-old guy, he had the models. And he was mentored. He was mentored by John Gruden, Jay Gruden. He was mentored by Bill Walsh and all those guys.
Coach Roberts, how did he get that opportunity, though? How did people get to, quote-unquote, know him?
It's hard. They got to know you in the neighborhood. Are you in the same neighborhood? So what we're trying to get them to do now is understand the United States has resources. Go out and get your resources. There's a bunch of resources out there. Go out and get beautiful young guys all over this country. Go out and pick one or two and model for him, mentor him, and get him going. If you don't have that opportunity, if you don't get out there and have that opportunity, or they don't know you, and they're certainly not going to get out and be aggressive and try to know you. So you've got to work. You got to do some strange things. Give you one little idea, and I did it by accident. I was at Garfield High School. I needed film work to study. So I went out to the University of Washington. I got all the film work I could get. And I studied it, and I studied it. Tried to get Garfield High School program going. Don James saw me there, knew me, and hired me. If I hadn't done that one little trigger of a thing, I don't know. But resources. I'm going to say resources. And people are the resources you got to get. And we just can't sit there and just say the white male. Believe it or not, there are some smart women that can coach a game of football. There are some smart people that can coach a game of football. But now the whole deal is you got to know they're out there. But I would like to ask you a question. Sure. Make a statement to you. I've been making this statement a lot of times. You are a white man in 1960s Texas. 1960s Texas. Okay? And you hire your staff. And they say, Juan, how can you hire a white woman? He will say, I don't know any. Now you come to a 1990s head coach here in America. And he says, how come you didn't hire a black coach? You know what he says? I didn't know any. Resources. If we're so modern, if we so tech, if we all these things, how come we don't go out and search this whole country for resources, people, and they come in all different packages. But now you got to be able to want to take that resource. If you win a game, you got to want to go to dinner with them. You got to bring them to your house. Now, are you all right with that?
Anthony Allen, you had an opportunity, number one, you've been a coach at the high school level and had an opportunity to build your own program and put your vision together. You also played for some of the legendary coaches. We referenced Don James. You played for at the University of Washington. You played for Joe Gibbs over in the Washington Redskins and was a part of a Super Bowl team, played with Doug Williams and so forth. What are there special qualities that make these men, quote unquote, magical?
They have to have special qualities. Don James, Joe Gibbs, you can almost make them as twins as far as I was concerned. They ran their program. They coached their coaches. They were disciplinarians. They made sure everything ran smooth. They made sure everyone was doing their job. Made sure all the coaches was doing their jobs. So they were a lot of light to me. I always say I played for two of the finest guys that ever walked this earth, Don James and Joe Gibbs. They were both highly successful. My first couple of years in the Atlanta Falcons, before I got to Washington, Dan Henning was my head coach, who came from Coach Gibbs and was in his coaching tree. And then when I went to Washington, you could just see the difference. I mean, Don James, Joe Gibbs, the personnel he had at the University at Washington, as opposed to the personnel we had in Atlanta, was just such a difference. But the way he ran his organization, the way Washington ran their organization, the way the players practiced, the way things was ran, you can just see and feel the difference. It's night and day.
The coaching experience and has changed over the decades. I mean, there just seems like there's a little bit more of a public relations role to it. You see Pete Carroll on the media or on radio and television almost constantly during the season, basically trying to sell the program, discuss different things that are going on, different aspects. Then there's obviously the aspect of coaching the team during the weekend and the game on Sundays. Has the role changed over the last 40 years since you were at the University of Washington? Is it a much greater role now? Is the visibility more? Tell us a little about the role of the modern head coach.
It's definitely greater now. It's definitely bigger now. Everything is bigger now than it was 30, 40 years ago. But it was a smaller scale. You were still doing the same thing. Coaches were still doing the same thing. It's just so much more media now, and there's so much more coverage now, and there's so much more ESPN all day long. It wasn't all day long. Then I remember when Bill Berman, during their 87 Super Bowl, was just like a little grunt man just running around before he just got to be that big and stuff. So that's definitely, everything has definitely changed over the years. But even the coaching has changed. I remember we talking about back then, when I went to Redskins, when I went to Atlanta, we had one coach who was a receiver coach. He was a black coach. In Washington, they had one coach, receiver coach. He was a black coach, Charlie Taylor. Emmett Thomas. Emmett Thomas was the defensive back coach, defensive coordinator. Actually, wasn't a coordinator. Pettibone was. So things were changing then. You went from one black coach on the staff, maybe to two black coaches on the staff. It's changed since then. Now over the years, you may have a few more. When I was in the University of Washington, we had a special team coach, Coach Roberts. We had a defensive back coach.
That's all we had. Yes.
And that was it. The rest of the coach was all white. So things has changed, things have grown. So you always get that, especially with this whole Brian Flores things going on now. Things have definitely changed and gotten better. But the overall big picture, the main man, the head man, as far as the NFL is concerned, that's something they definitely want to keep to themselves.
Kellie, we're going to come back to you in the next segment because we're going to talk about hiring. We're also going to ask your opinions about coaching as well. But Coach Roberts, Coach Allen, I just want to ask you both, quickly, because we have about 3 minutes to go in this segment. What are the characteristics that make a successful coach?
I'm gonna start off with saying being mentored. I'm gonna start off being mentored. Now, you may not be able to go out and model and mentor. You got to be able to go out and just get a mentor. So, the way I was mentored, I studied this and worked a long time. So, Al, how were you mentored? Well, I went to clinics and listened to other coaches. I'd go and watch the Washington Redskins. I watched the Huskies, watch those coaches coach, watch them speak. Then you go to golf tournaments and hear coaches speak. You're being mentored all along, every time. So now when it's time for you to be the head coach, you're mentored, you're prepared. You can get in front of the mic, you can get in front of the people and do it. But it does take a lot of maturing. It does take a lot of individual personal growth. You have to work on you. And then you have to know how to not only develop yourself, but develop groups also. So you got to develop leaders, not just followers. So you got to develop leaders, and it's hard. But you go one step at a time. First thing, you got your position group, you coach your position, then you coach the coaches, and then you coach the whole organization. And it's a mental block by block monitoring steps you have to take. And you have to go ahead and start off early. Start off early in high school, little league. Start off as grunt at the pro level, and the best thing you can do is get in those minority programs at the pro level and get in there and bust your butt. But now you got to make sure that's your gift, because sometimes you get in there and it may not be your gift, it may not be your family's gift. Wife might not like it, but so I'm going to say mentoring. It's the biggest push I can push right now.
Coach Allen, you've played for some of these guys. What makes a great coach? What makes somebody successful?
The organization. Oh, Anthony Allen. Oh,
this guy over here.
Oh, Coach. My bad. I thought
that's all right. That's all right.
I thought you said Allen. Okay. Sorry.
Some of the things that obviously what Coach talked about, but they have to have a vision. They have to be strong enough. You have to be able to coach and communicate with men. And that's one of the biggest things. A lot of coaches cannot communicate with their men and their grown men, especially the National Football League or in college. You have to be able to communicate. And I think other than a lot of the things Coach Rob said, communication is definitely one of the bigger things.
We are about to take a break, but when we come back, we are going to talk with Kellie Rodrigues Currie about hiring practices, and we'll delve more into this whole philosophy around the successful coach and what brings people to this particular field on your community radio station, rainieravenueradio.world.
You're listening to rainieravenueradio.world. Check us out on social media. Instagram, rainieravenueradio.world, and on Twitter at rainieravenueradio.
You probably have questions about COVID vaccines. Here are some answers about how they're being made.
How are COVID vaccines being produced faster?
Usually, vaccine testing and production are separate steps. But because of the pandemic, vaccines are being developed on parallel tracks. So both steps are happening just at the same time.
How are the vaccines being tested?
Right now, several different COVID vaccines are in testing. Each go through multiple clinical trials with up to thousands of volunteers.
How do vaccines get approved?
Not all COVID vaccine versions will make it to the final stages of testing and approval. Produced vaccines that do not pass clinical trials will be destroyed. But for those that do pass, a team of medical experts will examine test results and possible side effects. If the vaccine is effective and safe, it gets approved and gets to you. Go to covidvaccinewa.org to learn more. A message from the state of Washington.
1, 2, get down!
What's up, big and little homies? This is Mazvita Maraire, host of Seattle Sports Weekly on rainieravenueradio.world, your one-stop shop for Seattle sports. We cover preps, we cover college, we cover pro, we cover it all. Huskies, Mariners, Seahawks, Garfield, South, Roosevelt, Metro, King County. This is where you want to listen to for all the sports that's happening in Seattle. Seattle Sports Weekly on rainieravenueradio.world.
See a bad
Hey, Buford, why are you kicking that old CD player?
Because I can't hear the radio.
Can't hear the radio? Let me help you.
Hey, you two, quit beating up that outdated audio equipment. You can't hear the radio on a CD player.
You can.
No, you can't, you adorable simpletons. But you can hear some great radio on the Rainier Avenue Radio app. It's brand new, it's free, and it's available for Android and iPhone. In fact, you can download the Rainier Avenue Radio app right now from the Google Play Store or the iPhone App Store.
I'm going to go get me a smartphone right now.
I'm just going to put a graduation cap on my rotary phone.
You two have very significant personal issues. Get the Rainier Avenue Radio.world app today.
Yo, what's good? It's D-Money, and you should definitely check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, 9 to 11 Pacific, right on Rainier Avenue Radio.
With pint-sized Patron, P-Treasy to Don. Y'all be sure to clean your mirrors as we play brand new hip-hop and R&B from locals and worldwide.
Which ID yourself, a.k.a. Malcolm Flex. Make sure you check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, Pacific Standard Time from 9 to 11 p.m.
And to get those exclusive interviews that we be doing.
Sipping a brand new fresh juice every single week.
Yeah. Every Wednesday, 9 to 11, Rainier Avenue Radio.
Yeah.
Atlantic Street Center has been serving the children, youth, and families of the Seattle King County area since 1910. We partner with families and communities to raise healthy, successful children and youth through services including counseling, early learning, youth development, domestic violence, and education support for school-aged children. Committed to serving the African American community, Atlantic Street Center provides services and support for all marginalized people. Learn more at AtlanticStreetCenter.org.
You are listening to rainieravenueradio.world. Don't forget to log on www.rainieravenueradio.world.
Welcome back. Oh, am I here? Welcome back to our special broadcast of Black History Month, Blacks in Sports. This is Tony B. We're going to be celebrating all month long, and we're trying to give you a holistic experience, a comprehensive experience of what it means to be Black. Now, you can discuss certain issues, or you can talk about certain subjects. I remember once I was asked if I thought that I was radical, and it was very simple for me to answer that question. I'm Black. My existence is radical. So all of our guests here, the things that they're talking about and the things that they're going through through it from a different lens for some folks. They're going through it as a Black experience. And that's what we're trying to do for you this month. We're going to give you a lot of things to tune into. We're going to talk about health. We're going to talk about wellness. We're going to talk about tech. We're going to talk about trades. We're going to talk about things that are going on in our community, and it's to give you a lens into what it is to be Black, a Black experience, because that is a different thing. All right, we're going to turn you to our show, Blacks in Sports, and give you to Mr. Juan Cotto.
Thank you so much, Tony B., and welcome to the Columbia City Theater. And I am here with our three distinguished guests, and Coach Al Roberts, Coach Anthony Allen, former player Anthony Allen, and Kellie Rodrigues Currie from Seattle University. And Kellie, over the last week, we've heard a lot about the Rooney Rule and the bringing in Black coaches for these interviews. Has the Rooney Rule been effective in terms of providing opportunities for Blacks to be seen in the head coaching environment?
I think the Rooney Rule, when it was created, initially had some impact. The data trended upward in the hiring or in the front offices and the coaching staff. And then recently it's definitely trended downward. I think, but the bigger question really is when we start to look at hiring practices and whether it's quotas or the Rooney Rule or any sorts of those practices, we really need to think about there's action and then there's outcomes. And what we want are outcomes, right? We want coaches, Black coaches, we want coaches of color to reflect the players, right? We want the uniform personnel on the field to see representation in the front offices and in the coaching staff. And the actions of bringing in people of color and Black coaches for interviews are clearly not having the outcomes that are intended. So you can, they just increased the Rooney Rule to 2 rather than 1. Awesome, great, whoop-de-doo, right? Zero impact. So I don't know that it matters if we have the rule if there's zero outcomes.
Looking at the hiring practice of the NFL for head coaches in particular, it isn't like they put a advertisement out in the newspaper and all apply. There are committees that they establish and they set internally. Some of them include front office personnel. Some of them include the leadership in the organization. And I'm just wondering, for your perspective, what could a fair hiring process look like that would engage the opportunities for Black candidates?
I think that there's so much that goes into a hiring practice generally, right? I think when we talk about hiring, there are legal questions, certainly, right? How do you make it fair? How do you make it objective? How do you account for, especially when you're talking about coaching and some of the things that Coach Roberts was talking about, there's a lot of subjective components, right? When you've got coaches that are very different and you want somebody that's going to bring the style of coaching that you really want your players to be receptive to, that's going to work well with the general manager, that's going to work well with the front office. Coaches are very different, right? They might talk and present themselves as one way in an interview, and then on the sideline, they're a very different style of coach. I'm sure that you've seen that yourself, yes. that's a difficult thing to account for. Interestingly, one of the things that Coach Flores is asking for in his complaint, in his lawsuit, is a more structured or more accountability in the hiring process. Like, how do you bring in more voices? How do you ask for more opinions? And that's difficult, right? At the end of the day, you can have 20 people, you could have big panels and bring in everybody and bring in external people. At the end of the day, when you select a coach, that coach may or may not gel with their offensive coordinator, with their defensive coordinator, their special teams coaches, or the players. And you aren't going to know that until you're halfway through the season.
Let's say hypothetically, you are counsel to Roger Goodell, and this is another mess that the commissioner has to look at. It seems like every couple of years there's major messes that Roger Goodell falls into, and you have black coaches in the NFL. And some of them very, very visible: Byron Leftwich, Eric Bieniemy, and these are folks that we've been talking about now for several years, who have been on the head of the list for potential head coaching opportunities. After the last month, and then the announcement from Coach Flores in regards to the lawsuit, it opened up the perception that there are some obvious flaws. How would you counsel Goodell? How would you counsel the NFL? It's a serious question.
Yeah, okay.
How would it's a what can you do to build the confidence for the black coaches in the NFL who spend their careers as assistants that they will have a fair opportunity to become a head coach if they apply for one of these jobs?
I think what's a really important distinction is counseling. Being an attorney and to counseling Goodell is a very different question than counseling the NFL. Those are two different clients. I think the NFL has a huge problem, and they need to make a big change. The NFL needs to take a really hard look at some of the things that Flores is asking for, because there's some really great ideas in his complaint around how do you invest in the pipeline for offensive and defensive coordinators? How do you invest in creating opportunity and development for those coaches so that they can become head coaches? And I think there's some really good opportunity there. So when it comes to counseling the NFL, and really I think that's where the investment should be, right? It doesn't matter who the commissioner is. It's the NFL who needs to take a hard look at what their hiring practices and where their investment is going to be around developing their leaders, right? Any organization, doesn't matter if it's the NFL or a technology organization or anything. Any organization has a vested interest in developing their leaders for the next generation. That's just being a good employer. So they need to take a hard look at how they're going to do that.
Coach Roberts, the skills that you mentioned in regards to being a successful head coach, and we talked about mentoring, we talk about teaching, we talk about leadership, we talk about management, we talk about speaking to the media. Are these transferable skills that are recognized in some of our black assistant coaches? Do black assistant coaches get an opportunity to show these skills in the positions that they have?
First thing first, before I answer your question, those owners, they hire who they want to. Don't ever think they don't. They hire who they want to.
They hire who they want to.
Yep. Don't forget that. The next thing, I said it before, you want a young man to grow up and he wants to be a football coach, and he wants to eventually go to the NFL. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to keep repeating it. He needs those mentors. He needs to see those people, what they look like, what they sound like, what they act like, what do they do, what reading. They need to just to study. They need to know all the formations of things. You can be a great coach and get this team and lose, because this is not your team. Why isn't it your team? Because they're not feeding the players to this organization like you want it. But again, it's of course you need to be smart and strong, but you need those mentors. You need to be taught. Can you learn it? Absolutely, you can learn it. If somebody can sit down and teach you and bring you along, that model, that mentor, that monitor, You can be as tough as anybody. You got the chances. Are there some guys that are not very good head coaches? Yes. Are there some guys that are just special team coaches? Yes. Are there some guys just offensive, defensive coordinators? Yes. Are there some guys that can't do those things, but they're head coaches? Absolutely. Now, you're going to have a problem finding that. Now, who finds it? It's not the owners.
The A on this side, Coach Allen. Marvin Lewis, he applied for several head coaching jobs after he built one of arguably the greatest defense of all time with the Baltimore Ravens in the early 2000s. And there just seemed like there was some code word language. In one interview, I believe he was told that he didn't ask for the job as he walked out of the door. And some other folks had discussed the fact, was he more of a strategist than someone who was able to teach? Are there certain code words that they use to basically either diminish or maybe set the bar high for black coaches?
I think in the beginning, there was 9 jobs open this year. I think there was 9 jobs open. I think 7 has been filled so far. 1 mixed coach, 1 black coach just got hired. And before that, there was 7 white coaches hired. I mean, and the first thing Al said was the owners hire who they want to hire. And that's the problem. The NFL owners are old men that believe in a certain way of life, believe in a certain way things should behave. And black coaches are not high on their priority. They're just not. That's the simple truth. I was thinking about it a few minutes ago, and I was just like, you just sitting up here playing. Just, I know what I've been feeling these last few weeks with this whole Brian.
What have you been feeling these last few weeks? As a black man, tell me, with your experience in the NFL as a former player, what have you been feeling?
I mean, it's the same old game. And they're smart enough. I listened to Dan Patrick today saying, well, if I'm an owner of a team, I can hire whoever I want to hire, which is absolutely true. He said, well, if the New York Giants decided when they met Brian Daboll and he was the 3rd coach they interviewed for the job, they wanted to give him the job, then it's their right to give him the job. Now, you can't argue with that. It's absolutely true. But we still know that he still got fired after 2 winning seasons. Then you hear Wanstead say, well, I got fired after 10 winning seasons. It's still going to be different for the black coach. The black coach in Houston got fired after 1 year. And then you were down to 1 black coach in the NFL. I mean, the same issues kind of the whole thing with the black quarterback, the black head coach, the man that's hiring your team. If you're a white owner in the NFL, it's going to be twice as easy for you to hire, so much easier for you to hire a white man as your head coach. And
Kellie,
going through the whole process of it all, like you said, Al, talking about the tree, growing up, teaching them, mentoring. Well, he talked about the same coach with the Rams. That's with the Rams right now. He was coaching 20 years ago, 15 years ago, going through it. Well, he had young Shanahan. He's got maybe 5 coaches on his tree now that's in the NFL coaching. They took care of him. He was mentored. He was brought up. He was just taught everything and given everything. And now he may have 5 different coaches out there in the league coaching that are young coaches that's going to have a long time to coach. So now you get to the process. So now next time you're going to have a black coach, have an opportunity to hire a black coach. Yeah, Eric Bieniemy that won the Super Bowl 3 years ago, went to the Super Bowl last year, just missed the finals again this year. He can't get a job. Last was offered a job in Jacksonville. A week later, he was still offered that job before somebody else took it. It's just the nature of it. It's the truth. It's the honest truth. They just are not looking for that many black coaches in the NFL. It's just not what they want.
Kellie?
I think it's important. I think it's something we all understand, and it's just not said. So for the sake of saying it, they absolutely can hire whoever they want. And because the owners are white, they are white because of generational wealth. And the generational wealth exists in this country because of the history of the black culture as disproportionate to the white wealth and the plantation ownership. I mean, that's just, trace it back, that's where it goes, right? And we all know it, but we don't talk about it.
Coach Roberts?
I was going to just say that that the owners, when the owners have this this whole thing about them. You remember Al Davis when he was with the Raiders? He could go from LA back and forth, and he said he didn't care what the NFL did. So he had that kind of power going back and forth. What you guys don't know is that I consider myself first class affirmative action. When they needed 1 black coach, I came in right after they started needing 2 black coaches. And the 2 black coaches One coach the running backs, the other coach the defensive backs. If you guys were really, really sharp, you would notice the University of Washington with all the different head coaches, one coach the running backs, the other coach the defensive backs. It just changed recently. It's just changed recently. So I just want to make sure that we're on top of those things. And there's a backlash going on right now, and we don't recognize the backlash. You know what the backlash is? The backlash is I won 10 games, 10 years in a row. I got my job. I got fired. But if you notice it, it's a backlash. So as soon as something happens like this, Brian Flores, what's my young kid out of the 49ers a couple years ago? We need another one 5-6 years from now. We need to keep hitting it. We need to keep doing it. 5 years from now, we need someone else to speak up nationally. 5 years after that, we need someone else to speak up nationally. We've got to keep on going. If not, we're going to be back in another form of form of slavery.
Kellie, what toll does this take on Black coaches? When I think about Eric Bieniemy, for example, or Byron Leftwich, and also just in my own personal experience with people who have been waiting to be executives in companies who getting passed over as Black people, what does this say about the necessary patience you have to have? But also, I mean, are there ways that they can better show themselves as potential head coaches?
I don't want to speak for Black people, right? I am not Black, but I am a Hispanic woman, and so I can speak as a woman of color. And I'm sure you all can speak for your own Black experience. It is devastating, time and time again. My partner and the people who are close to me hear about it all the time. And you hear about it from both ends, right? Like, you're either completely passed over, and as a woman as an attorney, right? And law is a completely male-dominated field still, even with a relatively 50-50 split, it is still very male-dominated. And in sport, you have to show up and really show up as a woman of color in sport law. So you're either completely passed over, or when you do land the job or land the gig or whatever, it's because you got it because you're Black or what, Hispanic or a woman or whatever. So it's like you can't win either way, and it's devastating every single time. So I don't know what it does to them, but I think individually we all carry those little, we carry it with us, and then as a culture collectively, yeah. What were you gonna say?
Well, loss is kind of bags.
Yeah.
You carry it and you dismiss it. You push it to the side,
Mhm.
but it hurts you. It hits you. It's with you. It never leaves you.
What is the recourse for people of color, Anthony? We continue to play the game. You made a career of playing the game. We are fans of the game. We watch in droves. 80% of the league, I believe, is African American. The opportunity to play in the league obviously can help not only build a career, but it raises the level of experience in the community. We were also proud when we saw you playing in the NFL. But as a former player and as a Black man, when you see that the coaches are getting passed up, I mean, what is the recourse that we can have as communities as we watch this unfold? We can only get to a certain level.
Oh, I mean, it's always been that way, even through slavery and dealing with slavery. What do? I mean, what's your recourse? You stick in there and you fight and you try to survive as best you can. Coming up as a player, you want to play quarterback, a Black quarterback, but you get to college and you kind of get nudged away from it a little bit, and you can move to a receiver or you move to cornerback. And these things just go with you to the NFL. There's so many NFL quarterbacks or receivers now in the NFL that could have been quarterbacks, but had to change positions or change positions. And it's just something you deal with. I probably never made it to the league as a quarterback, so making the change, going to wide receiver, got me where I wanted to go at least. So you just find a way to make an adjustment and you deal with it. The coaching ranks are the same way. You just Coach Roberts been in the league long enough, and all the other coaches, even now, they won't even join Flores. I mean, because it's a death sentence. It's a suicide watch to put your name to what he's trying to get done.
Coach Flores has basically put a big barrier in his career.
Like Coach Rob said, he's doing the same thing Kaepernick did. He's taking a shot for the team, and it's not about money, but it's about recognition, about getting the word out there, and just holding the owners a little bit accountable. In 2 more weeks, it'll be over. It'll be done. But just hold them a little bit accountable for a minute, and it's not going to last long. It's not going to wait. They're not going to waver at all. They're not going to change what they do.
As a black man, do you still love the game? Do you still love NFL football?
I do. Yes, I do. I got a bigger issue with the whole quarterback thing, but that's my personal beef. But I still love the NFL. It is what it is. The owners, you always have to deal with the owners.
Should the black community still support the NFL? I mean, odds are we probably will. I mean,
how are you going to win that battle? And I don't know if they can win that battle. You say you got 70% players, and you got 1, maybe 2.5 head coaches now. Will the players stand up and make a stand?
Coach Roberts,
before you ask that question, yes. Should black people support it? Absolutely. Absolutely support it. We support our young kids. Those young kids that are coming out of all those areas, we got to support those kids because they're great little kids down there someplace. Plus that, those people that rode in those boats for hours and hours between those poles like that, we're supporting those guys. They prayed for us to get here. So why would we not keep going? We can't stop fighting. So what? Now, Flores didn't just give up for the NFL. He supported the whole race and races before him and races generation after him. Same as Kaepernick. So we all got to take chances. Now, there's going to be a coach or ball player in 4 or 5 years again, like I said, that has to step up again, and we got to continue to fight. And Super Bowl Sunday, go watch the game. But understand this, too. They got just what they want. They got 2 35, 40-year-old blonde kids as head coach, and they're going to try to keep that going. So we got to keep fighting.
Coach Roberts, we have 1 minute. I want to get your thoughts about, and let's talk about professional coaching, and I included Division I football into that. Yeah. Tell me about what you think of Deion Sanders is doing down at Jackson State and bringing in some of these former players, such as Tyrone Wheatley and Eddie George, who are now coaching teams at predominantly black universities. Does that give you a sense of hope and pride that we can create opportunities for ourselves?
I'm a football coach, and I look at production. You know what I look at? I look at the offensive linemen and I look at the defensive linemen. I want to know if they're coached. I want to know if the receivers are coached. I want to know if the quarterback is coached. I don't give a thing about Deion Sanders and whoever the rest of them. All those kids coached. I want to see that defensive lineman do the steps that he's supposed to take to defend himself and make the play. Now, I don't care who he brings in. But if Deion knows the game of ball like he's supposed to, he will coach those defensive linemen, offensive linemen like he's supposed to.
We are going to go ahead I want to say thank you so much for being here tonight, and we are going to bring up our media panel next, but we appreciate you being here, and if you'd like to stay, we certainly will be talking about other issues and would love to hear your opinions and thoughts on those. So Coach Al Roberts, Coach Anthony Allen, and Kellie Rodrigues Currie from Seattle University, thank you so much for your time. Tony, let's go to break.
Oh, Scott, are we good?
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not stopping a Mercer Island street brawl, I'm listening to rainieravenueradio.world.
Around for a long, long
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, wipe things down, clean up your space. When you cough and sneeze, do responsibly. If you feel you're getting ill, isolate at home and chill. No, you're not alone. Please pick up your phone and call 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health Community Radio Station will provide you with more information. Say Rainier Avenue Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
We got the feeling now.
R&B, soul, funk, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We give you all that and more on Star Time. Join me, Paul Pearson, for a 2-hour trip through the history of R&B. A new episode every week on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Come and get the feeling on Star Time on rainieravenueradio.world.
This is Big Poppy, host of Jazz from the Cabinets. Join me each week for a listening tour of the first century of jazz, an eclectic mix of Dixieland, big band, cool jazz, bebop, contemporary jazz, world jazz, all jazz in all forms. That's Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy on Rainier Avenue Radio, streaming worldwide on rainieravenueradio.world.
This message is brought to you by Public Health, Seattle and King County, the Washington Department of Health, Washington Chapter, AAP, and Within Reach. No matter where your classroom is, whether in person or online, routine vaccinations protect your child from serious diseases like measles, mumps, and chickenpox, and they keep your child safe, healthy, and thriving. Need help finding a provider? Visit parenthelp123.org or call the Help Me Grow Washington hotline at 1-800-322-2588.
You're listening to rainieravenueradio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, rainieravenueradio.world, and on Twitter at rainierav.radio.
If you or a family member are 55 or over and need nursing home level care, but want to keep living where you are, check out Providence Elder Place PACE. This program offers healthcare, housing, transportation, and recreational activities. There are no copays or deductibles, and it's covered through Medicare and Medicaid. Providence Elder Place PACE works to keep you healthy and in your home. Call 206-320-5325 or visit providence.org Elder Place. Providence.org Elder Place.
Join Rainier Avenue Radio from 5 to midnight for Sunday evening sound sessions. Jazz from the Cabinets from Big Poppy.
That's right. It's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Sergio LaCour's Love Lines.
It's Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio LaCour. Go into the phone line. Tell her who we talking to.
Sage Prince and Just My Opinion.
This is Sage, and that's just about going to do it for the first half of Just My Opinion.
K-Fox Night Beat with Nasty Ness Rodrigues.
The beat of the Fox. K-Fox Night Beat, Nasty Ness.
You know what? You're going to listen from 5 to midnight. Just turn it on and don't stop. DJ Alibaba. The Underground Surround Sound Star Time with Paul Pearson.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Paul Pearson.
Sunday evening sound sessions on Rainier Avenue Radio. Trust me, you'll be listening the entire time from 5 to midnight. Sunday evening, your sound session on Rainier Avenue Radio.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not explaining to my intern exactly what R&B is, I'm listening to rainieravenueradio.world.
No, you can't get enough of rainieravenueradio.world.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're live.
Welcome back to rainieravenueradio.world. It's me, Tony B, and our celebration of Black History Month. Celebration and education of Black History Month, providing you with a comprehensive experience of what it is to be Black. Now, again, what we do on this show as well is we talk about what's happening in our community, whether it's controversial. That may be up for you to decide. Whether it's something that you feel passionate about, again, that may be up to you to decide. Either way, we're going to broadcast it. And so right now, I'd like to thank Mr. Clarence Williams. We are going to share some information with you that's going on in our community, and I'm going to let you do that. If you want to introduce everybody and who you are, that's on you.
Well, thank you very much, and we are glad to have this opportunity to do that. Down at the end is Mr. Murphy. Right here is Jerry Willis, Robert Davis, who's our vice president. I'm Clarence Williams, and this is Eddie Rye, our mentor and community activist, and he's also an honorary firefighter for the Black Firefighters Association. What we have here is a situation that need not happen, and is particularly disturbing since it's happening during Black History Month. We have an organization that has purchased property over 40 years ago, and these gentlemen that you see here have paid it off so it's debt-free. It's in one of the busiest area of Seattle and one of the fastest growing in the central area, 23rd and Union and 23rd and Pine, 1 block away. As you can see, all of the high-rises and apartments that's going on there. Well, for some reason, some of the younger firefighters, and it's only about 3 of them who are on the executive board, has decided that it is time to sell the property and give money to scholarships and leave it abandoned. We disagree with that totally and wholeheartedly, because when we purchased the building, we purchased it with the mindset that it would be a museum and a legacy for Black firefighters throughout generations. And for some reason, the younger firefighters who are wanting to do this at this time, he likes me, seem to be misguided in many ways. So we feel it is our job to mentor them, to tell them what would be great for not only the Black Firefighters Organization, but the Black community at large. Because that property is never going to go down, it's only going to go up. And while they're wanting to sell it for $675,000, we know that it's worth close to $1 million. So we are losing some property that will never be regained if the sale is allowed to go through. One thing God is not making, and that's any more land. All the land that's here is all that it's going to be. So we need to hold on to it as a matter of economic growth, as a matter of stability. And when we have seen how it has happened in many, many years ago when African Americans owned land down south and other places, how it was stolen and taken away from them. Unfortunately, we have to bring this to the community because it is the community who has supported us down through the years. And it is that same community that expect us to do better and to grow in every respect. What we did was a bit of sacrificing. We sacrificed our jobs, we sacrificed money, we sacrificed careers in many instances to make sure that these young people who are coming on now can get on. And how do we do that? We believe that every woman and every minority in this country had an opportunity, should have an opportunity to work for the fire service. So we challenged that in the courts. We won in the Washington State Superior Court. We won in the Washington State Supreme Court. And we took it all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And under the guidance of Mr. Lim Howell, we won that case again. And we did that so these younger people can come on and have something to hang their hats on. And we don't want to see that property go back out of our hands and go back to other hands where it cannot be used in a very sufficient way. So we thank you for giving us the opportunity to experience. Wednesday, this coming Wednesday at 12 o'clock, we're going to have a press conference and a rally at the building at 2302 East Pike Street, right on the corner of 23rd and Pike. And we want all of the community to come out and support us and show that you care about the economic conditions that we find ourselves in at this time. So please do so. Thank you.
When we first came into the fire department, we had to fight to get into the fire department. We had to fight to stay in the fire department. We had to fight to get promoted in the fire department. Now we have to fight again, but we have to fight our own people. And that's what's so sad about it.
All right, we'll see you on Wednesday, 12 noon. Thank you much. Thanks for Eddie Rye for helping us out.
Thanks, Tony B.
And thanks, Tony, for sure. All right.
All right, we're gonna do a change here and bring our guests out. And Anthony's up here, Rick is up here, and Steve, you want to come up?
Okay, where you want me?
All right. We are going to get situated here. We're also going to try some things. Yeah, can you do that from up here? Let's check and see what we've got. We've got a bunch of folks joining us on StreamYard. First of all, let me see if we can get Corey Sampson. And Daniel, we might need this speaker out here. Corey, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Corey, we got you?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. And Scott Laigo. Do we have you, Scott? Okay,
right here.
Okay. And I think we have one more person, and I can't tell who that is, but tell us your name.
I guess it's me, Hugh Wyatt.
Say your name again?
Hugh Wyatt.
Okay. And no, I see we have somebody else up there as well. Who else is joining us?
It's Will Sanchez.
Will Sanchez. Okay. Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio's broadcast of Blacks in Sports. I'm Tony B. You know me. If you know one thing about me, I have open, honest, frank conversation. And the goal is to give you a holistic Black experience. Now, there are lots of things that we're going to do that specifically will probably hit on an issue that's important to you. If you think education is the most important thing, of course we're going to be talking about education. Mental health is critical. Of course we'll be talking about mental health. We'll be talking about the importance of Blacks in trades, how to be your own boss. You know, I like to say that no matter what building it is, you don't think you can build a building, I bet you can make a door, and every single building has a door. Plenty of them. So again, a number of different things that we'll be covering here about Blacks in tech. We're also going to have performances, exhibitions. Northwest Tap will be here. But the thing is, when we have personal conversations like this and when we have panel discussions, you get things from a Black perspective. And that's not one homogeneous thing. Although we do have, all of us have suffered and been inflicted with 400 years of oppression in this country. And so unfortunately, that's one thing that we have in common. So you're going to get part of that as part of this conversation. And I'd like to welcome my guest here, starting immediately to my left, Mr. Steve Kellie. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you for being here, man. And I had to go first because you're the white guy, so we got to get this over. No, I'm just playing. And you're also going to be the first one to die in the movie. But
I wish I was in the movie.
Steve, good to have you here, man, and great to have you as part of this conversation. I think you can provide an incredible perspective for us, whatever it is. And my man, Mr. Rick DuPree, who needs no introduction. You might have to move closer to that mic, Rick, or bring it close to you.
All right.
How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well. Good to be here. Good to be here in the theater, and congratulations on Rainier Avenue Radio getting this spot. And yeah.
And
it's
so
good to have this conversation. You know, you talk about having a conversation. It's important to have the conversation and to give from the Black perspective. You and I, obviously, years ago, KJR gave our listeners then a perspective that may not have been welcomed. But
you mean when we blew KJR up?
What happened there anyway?
We'll have to talk
That's for
about
another
that.
time.
And also still with us, Mr. Anthony Allen. Again, phenomenal athlete. Only topped by being a better human being. So, Anthony, you've done a lot in this city, and you grew up here, and you went on to a number of things, and I just wanted to keep you on board, part of this conversation. And our other guests are here as well, and I will be inviting them to this conversation. So, I can tell you this much. I know that sometimes having conversations about race is uncomfortable. I'll just preface this by saying it's about to get much blacker right now. So let's start with some things that are taking place. We were talking about head coaches. And Anthony, you played professional football. Would it have made a difference in your career if you would have had a Black coach? Does that translate into somebody automatically understanding you? You had Black coaches in the NFL. Is there something significant about that for a Black athlete could enhance that experience, could make that experience better?
Wow. That's a good question. Since I've never had a Black coach.
Never?
I had a Black coach in high school.
Never a Black head coach.
Never a Black head coach.
Yes.
Never a Black head coach. Except in high school, Coach Robertson was my only Black head coach I ever had in my life.
Wow.
Playing football. It wasn't Little League. I didn't play Little League, so never mind.
Did you think you could never have a Black coach like we thought we could never have a Black president?
No, I'm smart enough to know better than that. But the fact was I never had one except for the one I had in high school. Would it have made my experience better or different? I'm smart enough to probably say no. Now, that may not be the answer one would like to hear, but
It's your
playing
answer.
football is playing football, and you play for the right reasons, not for the color of the skin of your coach that's coaching. I think enough guys can have a better chance. But from that standpoint, no.
Corey, I want to bring you into this conversation. Corey, as a head coach at Rainier Beach, Corey, are you there? I want to make sure you're there. Are you there, Corey?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you do anything special for your players to prepare them for what happens after they leave Coach Sampson? And Corey, I know that you nurture your players. You care about your players. Do you find it necessary to tell them, hey, it ain't always going to be like this? Or how do you approach that? Is it even necessary?
Yeah, I tell them every day. I mean, I prepare them for life lessons. We talk about when they graduate from high school. We talk about even when they're in high school and how to carry themselves and how to talk and be out in the public and what's really going to happen in the real world. I mean, we have conversations at least a couple times a week. We talk about even during football games with the refs or even traveling to far out cities and just playing with an all-Black team. So, I'm telling them about it, and then they're like, dang, Coach, you were right. So, I try to give them my lessons about it.
And Corey, in that regard, for you got players who are going to play D1 ball, and a lot of players who are going to school. Your experience that you've had, how does that translate today with today's players? There was a period of time, as you know, a while ago, we thought there would never be a Black quarterback. You see a lot more position players Black now. How does that translate when you talk to them today? Do they have the same awareness that maybe you had when you were playing football?
I give them the same awareness. The opportunity is a little bit more open for those guys now as being players versus being coaches. So the opportunity is there for them guys to see it in a different perspective than how I saw it growing up. I mean, I played high school quarterback when I was in high school, and I wanted to play college quarterback. I had a couple offers to play quarterback, but everybody said, like, you got to play defensive back. So, I mean, it's a new thing. Times are changing. Like for the players, the players are dominating the league, but as Black coaches, that we're still light years behind on that.
That's Coach Corey Sampson, coach of the Rainier Beach Vikings football team. Corey, do you think it's possible for you to be a head coach in the NFL, or is that an aspiration?
No, it's not an aspiration, man. It's too much hard work. It's too much of an uphill climb. I mean, starting off now trying to be in the NFL rankings, it's too far away because, I mean, it's getting younger and younger as coaches. That you can see the coaches are 30 and 26 to 35 now. I mean, the day of old coaches like Buddy Ryan, the 80s, 90s are pretty much going to be out the window in a little bit.
Thanks, Corey. Don't go anywhere. Rick, I want to ask you the same question. You played at FAM. You went to a black college, then you ended up going to the University of Washington. What was the difference for you? Obviously, the University of Washington, D1 school. Was there a difference for you? And why did you transfer from FAMU to the University of Washington?
Yeah, I want to play D1, and so I had the aspiration of playing and going to the next level. So I felt that being at a Division I school was the way to go. Hindsight maybe would have played that out differently. But with that said, black coach at FAMU, and FAMU had won the 1AA at that time national championship the year before. But when I transferred to University of Washington, the man you had on here earlier, Al Roberts, was my position coach. And, at that
he said there were basically two positions, so you must have played running back or defensive back.
yeah. Well, running back. And so, and the interesting thing is that at that level, and Coach Roberts talked a little bit about that, the head coach often is coaching the coaches coaching their position players. So I didn't have a relationship with the head coach. University of Washington didn't have a relationship with Don James. It was with Al Roberts. And Al Roberts, he failed to mention that the type of coach he was, he motivated you. I would have done anything for him. And he got out there with us and motivated us. And he taught me early on, he said, you have to understand as a coach, he said, I've got to be a parent, a counselor. I've got to be the man kicking somebody in the butt. He talked about all these different roles he had to play, knowing his players, knowing what was going to motivate them. And that's something I've taken with me throughout my life in employment and what have you. Interesting thing, I played arena football and had a black coach that was my head coach in arena football, which was Anthony's receiver coach in Atlanta, a guy by the name of Bob Harrison. And I think the difference for me is that I knew that Coach Roberts, Coach Harrison, that was such arena league was a small league. It was the inaugural season, and it was small enough where I was able to have a relationship, and they could relate to my experience as a black man. And I knew that, and that made a difference for me.
I'm going to switch it up here a little bit. I want to talk to you, Steve. First,
I can't wait to hear what your first question is to me. I've been trying to figure it out in my head, and I have no idea where you're going with this.
The first thing I'm going to do, because this is what we do in the black community, is I'm going to show you some love. then I'm going to get in your Kool-Aid. All right. But this is Steve Kellie, legendary sports writer. I don't know for me, but for probably everybody else here. That's why we picked up the Seattle Times to read the sports, is because we wanted to see the opinion that you would bring to the table. It wasn't just the X and O's. You would do some behind the scenes stuff that we could all relate to, whatever color that we were. And that was the only place I know for me, maybe Anthony or Rick might feel differently, that we knew that we could get the background information on one of the black players on the team, not from just the perspective of he was black, but as a human being. So that was pretty important. And when I did radio for KJR, this guy was always eager to come on my show, and all the white guys weren't.
Appreciate it.
So that was cool. So my question, Steve, to start this off, honestly, when you were a sports writer, were you sensitive or insensitive, or didn't think about the fact that the players who you were talking to, the players who you were interviewing, the players who you had to ask questions may have had things that were going on in their life that you had no concept of when you were getting ready to ask them that question about the game?
Well, I think I'm lucky because I grew up at a time in journalism when we had access to the players. We could, we traveled. I covered the Portland Trailblazers and then later the Seattle Sonics, and we traveled with the players, and we'd be stuck in airports for hours. And I had to buy everybody's breakfast. These guys were making like $100 million a year, and I'm making 35 cents a day. But I got.
But at the end of the day, what they knew is that if there was a problem with the police, your 35 cents was going to go further than their 100 million.
Well, And we had incidents like that. And we had incidents where, back then there was a huge cocaine problem in the NBA. This was like late 70s, early 80s. And players would come up to me and say, and my point about the traveling and the access is they got to know me, and they got to know that I did the job, and I cared for them, and I had empathy for their struggles, both socially and athletically. So that gave me a little bit of clearance with them. And I'm sorry, what was your question exactly?
Ultimately, at the end of the day, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you were talking to players, and I'm saying, and I could be wrong, that when you were asking them that question, did you take into consideration that there were things going on in their lives that you had no understanding of? Were you sensitive to that?
Well, not only that, I knew because they would tell me this stuff. So I would, either just stay away from them, let them kind of fight through whatever demons they were fighting. But with the cocaine problem, it was a really hard thing to cover because I kind of knew who was doing it and I knew who wasn't doing it. And some of the players would come up to me who were doing it and say, NBA's really putting the heat on. If they ask you about it, could you tell them I'm clean? That happened in a few cases.
Now we're talking about
but
black players or white players, or you're talking about predominantly black players? Just be honest about it.
Predominantly black. I mean, there were certainly white guys doing it as well. But I remember, first of all, I've never seen them do it. So I can't write for sure that, Joe Smith is doing, and there was a Joe Smith. He was, there was a Joe Smith who played for the Warriors for a long time. But I knew that they were doing it, but I had no proof. So I couldn't write about it. And it's almost like steroids in baseball. Everybody knew that Mark McGwire was doing steroids. Nobody saw him do it. Nobody, back then they weren't tested. So I understood problems that were going on, marital problems. I talked to a guard or center for the Trailblazers who was in a terrible slump. And I said, he just sat down one day. I said, what's going on? I mean, you're in outer space right now. And he told me he was going through a divorce. He had caught his wife with someone else, and it was just tearing him up. And, I said, well, do you want me to write about that? Because, people were wondering. He said, and he kind of said no, and then he let me write about it. Because that was a key part of his existence at that time.
I'm going to counter that.
What's that?
I'm going to counter what you just said because everybody gets divorced.
Hey. I'm part of that club.
But what I'm talking about is maybe he did or didn't tell you about the time that he went to a restaurant and they made him wait because he was black. And they didn't say it, but he knew it. The time when somebody called him a nigger and he didn't say it, but he knew it. The times that he just didn't feel like getting up in the morning and going to the damn stadium because the oppression he had to carry because of everything that was expected of him in this professional sport that he was playing, where he better excel as a black person to be on this team. Those are the kind of issues I'm talking. And it's not personal. It's just that's something that Anthony might be able to answer that question, and I'm going to ask him that as well, if there was any issue with the media or things. But for you,
when he was talking to me and not mad at me, Maurice Lucas and I would used to go out to dinner on the road. Big, tough, 6'10", power forward, great guy, very smart. I love going out, very funny. I loved going out to dinner with him. And in Portland, everyone treated him like royalty. But on the road, even him, we'd come out of a restaurant, we couldn't get a cab. We didn't always get the best seats in the restaurant. Just a lot of that stuff. And to this day, I think he invited me to see what he was going through. And we would talk the next day, and he would tell all the players, hey, I brought the white boy to dinner. and he learned something tonight. So that's how I built up rapport with those guys. And I think that's how I learned to understand the pressures way away from the game.
Were you a unicorn? Were you an outlier, or was that consistent among the media at the time? Did you notice that?
Well, you know, I was in Portland, so there wasn't a whole bunch of media, but I don't think a lot of players went out with writers. And you know, the one thing that I mean, I wasn't their friend, and they knew they were. And like I said, Maurice Lucas all the time would say, "If you don't get off my case, I'm going to give you one of these." So we had our differences, but you know, again, I was around, so they knew that if they were mad at me, they could jump me and yell at me, and they would also kind of know that I knew a little bit more about their history.
And Anthony, I'm going to go to the. We've got some folks on virtual here, but really quickly, did it make a difference to you whether media was black or white, or did you just say this is media?
No. And to go back to the original first question you asked me was, would it make a difference if I had a black coach in the NFL?
Yeah.
And I said no to that. But having my first football coach, whether it's black or white, being that guy right there, made all the difference in my whole entire career, probably my whole entire life. So from that standpoint, and the coach at Rainier Beach, yes, they do make a difference when you're in the community and you have a black coach, especially at the high school level. It makes a difference. I remember so many games and the things we talk about in our huddles, you know, 4 overtimes against Blanchette, and Al is cracking jokes and just trying to calm everybody down. I mean, the way we worked. When I got to University of Washington, there was nothing I wasn't prepared for.
Do you remember your Super Bowl where somebody, a major sports writer, asked Doug Williams how long he had been a black quarterback?
Oh, yeah. You see him coming sometime. I mean, and again, being here in this area and dealing with the media, again, he trained us for it all. And so you get there and you see the question coming, and you prepare, and you know, and sometimes they could ask you a question and you just smile. They're like, oh, okay, he figured it out. He's going to give us a different answer. So you learn how to deal with the media.
Yeah. So you don't think it would have made a difference if you would have had a black head coach in the NFL? Don't think it would have changed anything?
No, I play football.
Gotcha.
I mean, I'm gonna play for whoever I play for. Coach Roberts, Coach Gibbs, Coach James, Coach Henning. I play football.
Professional football player, Mr. Anthony Allen. This is Tony B. You're listening to rainieravenueradio.world. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to talk again to our previous guests. I'm going to grab the folks who are visiting us virtually, and we're going to get them on the line as well. Again, we're celebrating Black History Month right here on rainieravenueradio.world. I'll be back right after this. Radio.world. This is our special celebration of Black History Month. I'm getting sound feedback from. But anyway, we are here giving you a holistic experience, a comprehensive experience of what it means to be Black. Yes, we'll be talking about a lot of different things over the course of this month. As a matter of fact, on the 15th, being an African immigrant in Black America. It's not as easy as it sounds, both ways. We'll be having that discussion. Shukri Olu, who just ran for public office, will be joining me, and a couple of other people. And that's the 15th. That's from 7 to 8. Then also from 11 to noon. I'm just picking arbitrary dates here. On Tuesday, the 22nd, I believe it is, there will be a presentation by Taswiri, and that's for kids. And so a lot of good stuff going on here at the radio station. On Thursday, the 24th, from 5 to 6, there'll be a discussion about this thing called Blacklash. What is Blacklash, you're asking? And this will be presented by our folks from Eastern Washington. So all of those of you who are listening and watching in Eastern Washington, we appreciate you, and we still got you, and your folks are coming down here on the 24th to talk about Blacklash. So what is Blacklash? Basically, it's this. When there is a monumental moment for Black people where change is perceived and Black people are feeling good, something awful happens. No, that's just, not being pessimistic. That's not just, but it is. After the Emancipation Proclamation, that was immediately followed by the Black Codes, the Klan. After the Civil Rights Voting Act of 1866, immediately followed by Jim Crow. You can go through history and see, and so folks thought at the same time when George Floyd happened, after the Civil Rights Movement of 1964, mass arrests of Black people followed. So people thought that George Floyd again would be this seminal moment. So we're going to see what happens. Already we know that most of the reforms they were talking about are either repealed or didn't go through, and people aren't talking about it in the same way that they were talking about it before. The other part of that for Black people is this thing called Blacklash. And you can see that happening now as voter laws are being changed, and there is a concerted effort. So again, we're going to have a number of different conversations here on rainieravenueradio.world in celebration and education of Black History Month. And I believe I have Troy Miles joining me. Troy, are you there?
I'm here. Great to be here.
Good to have you, Troy.
Awesome.
Why don't we start by this, Troy, because I could use the information too. Give us a little bit of background information on who you are.
Oh, well, I was born in Michigan, lived in Maryland for a number of years, but mainly I grew up in Seattle. I consider myself Seattleite. Went to O'Dea High School. Friends with Anthony, friends with Rick DuPree. How you guys doing? I'm a teacher and I'm a creator. Is really in the long and short of it is what I am. I like to teach. I like to create. Those are the two things that have kept me afloat. That's where my energy has been for the last 20, 25 years. I'm a former athlete. My dad was a former NBA player. So I've kind of been around the sports world and had an opportunity to kind of, at least early exposure. So it was never an overwhelming thing to me. So I kind of look at things that happen at face value in regard to that. So I'm a lifelong Seattleite. I consider myself to be that. And so that's basically my background.
I'm going to ask you the same questions that I've asked folks on this stage. The first one will be that I asked Anthony. Would having a Black coach make a difference to you? Did it make a difference to you?
Well, I actually never had a Black coach, but but I mean, I think it's similar to what Anthony said. When it's my role to be a player, I play for whoever the coach is, or whoever the organization is. I have a responsibility to my teammates, and And so even if it was a black coach, what type of black coach are we talking about? Now I think they're depending on how he thinks and how he acts politically, then perhaps it would be an advantage, because some of the things that some of the gaps, some of the things that get lost, and they're not intentional. The coach can't meet everyone's needs, and there's certain needs that I might have as a African American or black athlete that a white coach or a white coaching staff just may not be able to provide for me, and it's not intentional, it's not malicious. So I've never had the opportunity to play for a black coach. I don't know what that's like, but I know that a coach is a coach. You respect him. He's or she is someone who to be, like I said, respected and cooperated with.
And this question regarding media, did you at all think about it at the time, whether there was white media or black media? Did you have to factor in that potentially when having conversations, you would have to code switch in order for your conversation to accommodate a white writer or a white audience? Was that an issue, a concern?
I don't know if I thought about it that way. For me, I just want to always represent myself well, and so when I'm being addressed or I'm dealing with people, I just try to treat it as a face value situation, and those are the particulars that I deal in, and that's really the long and short of that.
So when I say blacks in sports, what does that mean to you? What comes to your mind? What's the first thing you think of when I say blacks in sports, Troy?
Well, I mean, it's probably cliche, but I think excellence. I mean, when I think of blacks and the role we've played in sports, it's synonymous with excellence. And so it's unfortunate, as we've kind of been talking about and relating this to the Brian Flores situation and the coaching situation for black coaches in general. It really comes down to how competent that you are and given an opportunity. And when you don't get certain opportunities, or you're not able to make the same type of natural, organic, how should I say it? Just represent yourself in an organic way and have that be enough, because I don't try to code switch. I just try to be myself, but I'm also aware that I'm also being I'm not representing the whole group, but I also know that there's just certain things that that people think, that people in our culture are naturally, however you want to say it, programmed to think about black men or black people, and it might be in subtle ways. And so I'm not trying to change. I'm always being myself, because I think we're all raised as Americans first and foremost, even though we may distinguish ourselves as a Black American or African American. We're all Americans, so we have a common ground naturally. But we do have to be aware of some of the stereotypical things that may be levied against us. And yes, I have an awareness, but I don't think I change. I think I just try to be my natural self based on my circumstance, based on the environment that produced me to be who I am.
And Troy, I appreciate you joining us. Don't go anywhere. As I mentioned before, we are not one homogenous people. We are a number of different things. And that perspective comes from where we sit, where we stand, what we're exposed to. And so don't expect us all to say the same thing, but there probably you will find some things that we consider to be shared identity while we have this conversation. I want to get everybody to answer that question. Kellie, I'm asking you to come up to the microphone really quickly here. We had a brief conversation. Oh, yeah. And we talked about Seattle University and sports law, right? So as a person who teaches in sports law, when I say blacks in sports, what comes to mind? First thing that comes to mind. Well, let me make sure we have your microphone. Are we good? Okay. I just want to make sure, Jake, because I'm not hearing it, and I don't want to get this started. Okay. Daniel, you got it? Daniel does not have it. Okay, so I'm going to give you this microphone to answer that question, because you look like you were pausing for a second. And here you go, Kellie.
All right, better? I think excellence, definitely. I think that's a good answer, but I also think a lot of struggle. I think, similar to what we were talking about before, there's a lot of judgment around, are you winning on your own merits? Are you winning because you're taking performance-enhancing drugs? And certainly non-Black athletes are judged for similar, judged with similar arguments, but I feel like there's just so much critique. All right.
So it sounds like almost like it was less about sports when I said blacks in sports. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but it didn't sound so much like it was about sports. As a person who teaches sports law, when you think about blacks in sports, I mean, would it, I hate to say oppression, but I mean, I associate that with struggle. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think that the intersectionality of whether it's Black or just people of color or gender, I think anytime we take the non-white male figure and we are evaluating sport without that non-white lens, we're always looking at it with a sense of judgment. We're not looking at it through a sport lens. And the intersectionality of, color and gender, it's always about something else.
Well, like I said, we're going to disagree on this, and we get to, but too many times Black is combined with other things. We're talking about Black, which is something different. And so to put it all in one box, when I think about, that's part of the problem that happens, and that's our interests get co-opted by other interests. That's just me, and I'll let you respond to that if you want to, otherwise I'll...
My only response is, I think you're absolutely right, and we do, as a culture, as a community, a non-Black member of our larger community, I think that you're absolutely right to call that out. And I think I do it because I'm not Black and I don't have that experience. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
Like I said, just open, honest conversation. I appreciate it. Al, you wanted to address something, and really quickly, the first thing I want you to do is, what comes to your mind when I say blacks in sports?
I'm going to say there's a problem. There's a problem. Why does it have to be black in sports? Why don't we just say sports? When you say Black American, we got a problem. We got a problem. Every time you said no, there's no reason to say blacks in sports other than just say sports. Because I happen to be a Black man in sports, so there's a problem. I think it's a trick question sometimes.
Right.
It's a trick question. There's no need for you to say it like that unless there's a problem. So I'm going to ask you, sir, what's the problem?
The problem is we weren't allowed in the major leagues. We weren't allowed in the NFL. We're discriminated. We can't be head coaches, Black players. Those are the problems. That we also have to be civic leaders. We can't just be ball players. That's why there was a Jackie Robinson that had to stand up in a certain way. That's why there was a Muhammad Ali. That's why Althea Gibson had to demonstrate the poise that she had, because we can't just be athletes. We have to be Black athletes. That's my answer.
So you answered the question. Blacks in sports. So anyway, thank you.
There you go, Coach.
Earlier we were talking about, can a Black coach coach a white player, or can a white coach coach a black player? The answer is, if he can coach, yes. If he can coach. But I understand this now. You said we got differences, right? When you're talking to this guy, when we're coaching, we're in a foxhole. When you're in the foxhole in the service, everybody's a Christian and nobody's racist. Everybody's Christian, because we all playing the same God now, and nobody's racist. Because I got to watch your back, you got to watch my back. So now, can that white coach coach Anthony Allen? As long as he's in the foxhole, they both jump in that hole, he can coach his butt off, double A is going to play. But when they come out of the foxhole, that other coach is going to go that direction, and Anthony's going the other direction. My desire is to go the same direction that player went. I'm going to give him a ride home. I'm going to help him with a sandwich. I'm going to do whatever I can do. I'm going to care about it. I'm going to love him. Okay? When the other coach happens to go the other way, will he go there sometimes? Yes. And you also asked about white reporters. It's all about trust. You ask him. It's just about trust. I got to say, hey, can I talk to you and give you information, but I need you to protect me and protect yourself. It's all trust. And I've talked to black reporters and white ones and everything else, and they both hurt me.
Tony, real quick, I want to say to Coach's point, legendary Hall of Famer coach Casey Jones told me, he said, Rick, when I played in Boston, he said Boston was extremely racist, as we know. And there were players on the Celtics team that we didn't do anything with outside of playing basketball. But he said, when we went through that door of that locker room, we became family. And for him, 8 of his 9 years, they won the NBA title. And so he made that distinction, that understanding, and I think the coach's point, understanding we're here for a common goal. And we put aside all this other stuff to focus on this common goal. And that's something that has stuck with me. But I think as we talk about Brian Flores, I'll just say this, is that Brian Flores basically committed career suicide. And he did that. He's taken one for the team. And black coaches, black athletes have continued to have to do that because it is inequitable. It is not equitable. There's so much racism, discrimination going on at the professional level and on down. There's no white player, white coach that has to make a career defining move or a statement like Flores has done. You take a look at, we talked about Colin Kaepernick. You would go back in the day, you look at you when you had, the big guys, you had Russell and Kareem and Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali all coming together. The black athletes are ones that have had to do that because we're fighting for change so that we will be treated equally. And that still is a fight that's going on today.
I think of Colin
Hold
Kaepernick.
on. And I appreciate the dialogue going back and forth, but I got to stop the white guy. I'm just messing with you, Steve. I'm gonna come back, but the same. Saul.
Yeah. I thought it would work if I turned into. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Here we go.
Cool. So, you all right? You good?
Oh yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm just getting ready.
First thing I'm gonna ask you is, why are you here?
I'm here because my friend Juan Cotto asked me to be here. I used to be a member.
Beyond Juan asking you to be here, why are you here during Black History Month having this discussion?
Well, because you guys needed your token Jewish guy. But outside of that joke, which didn't get anybody in this audience, it's because there is a problem in the NFL. Like, I'm just a fan, and in the media, right? When I was at the radio.
It's a different thing. So you're here in celebration and education, and I'm not picking on you, because you feel that there's a problem, and you're not the only person that said that.
Yeah.
Coach said the same thing. It's an interesting way to think of it. And then I was just talking to Rick, and maybe I think like Rick was thinking, when I think of blacks in sports, I think of heroes. I think of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Muhammad Ali because of the role they had to play. And so that's part of but you see it as, you see what is a problem.
Just look at the plain old numbers. You had one black NFL coach until today, and now you have 2. It got doubled. Woo, progress. But there's that's not nearly enough progress. And we're looking at a situation where the Rooney Rule 1, Rooney Rule 2 didn't work, and the NFL is going to have to lean into this because you're looking at the statement of a coach who's trying to advance his career and get to the next level, taking huge risks, right? Probably never going to get back to that level. That's like a radio person reaming the station after you get fired. We all get fired.
So when did this become a problem for you?
I mean, it's been a consistent problem, but you wanted my opinion today, so it's probably my biggest problem right now because I'm on the hot seat. That's a weird thing to say, but like I've been thinking about it a lot today.
A lot.
Yeah, because it's been a huge news story. And it's something that was top of mind before. And it's weird because like my biggest comparison is actually, I'm an entrepreneur and I work with a lot of women and men, and I give them both the same advice about when you get a new job, you got to ask for a raise. But a lot of the women haven't heard that advice.
So was this an epiphany for you? And I'm just putting you, because you're saying this thing, this didn't just start.
Oh, absolutely not.
And so was this something that you were aware of when you were a child, when you were first getting into sports, when you were thinking, who are the people who play this game? Who are the people who coach this game? Who are the people who own the teams? Who are the people who make the decisions about who gets traded where? Were you thinking about those things as a child? Or did you somewhere later in life?
I mean, I wasn't that smart of a child.
Well, I know it's a joke, but I'm asking you seriously. Were you thinking about those things?
I mean, I started thinking about it when I thought about Warren Moon, right? Because I'm really black. Like you'd have such an interesting.
And so how old were you so that we can put that in perspective when you were thinking about it?
13, I would say, was when I really started to lean into thinking about Warren Moon's career. Because I was born in 1989, right? So I wasn't like watching him be a top tier UW quarterback. But then like you learn about him because he comes back to the Seahawks as this older quarterback. You start reading about his career. And then you just realize the injustice in kind of what he went through being this top tier Rose Bowl winning quarterback who, had to go to Canada. And, Seattle joke, but there's no worse sin than having to go to Canada.
Big picture things got your attention.
Yeah.
What about the other things that I was talking about, that I was talking with Steve about, the day-to-day experiences that not just Warren Moon, but all black athletes went through and continue to go through. And it's okay, but the big picture things are important if they get your attention. Does that translate into, wait a minute, there's got to be more to this than big picture things?
Of course. I mean, I experience it less out of, I'm not a very good athlete, I'm a good talker. So it's more out of like the people I work with or the individuals I'm friends with, like watching Seattle go from a white city, like super duper white, to more diverse in what I would call the brunch room. Like my friends that I have are different than the friends that I had when I was younger, when literally everybody was white. Like I can be in a room with people very easily in Seattle now and have great conversations where I'm the only white person. And it's not all the time, but it happens. And like I had to search out those relationships and build those
I'm going to stop you just for a second for all the people out there who are going, as a black person, that's my everyday existence. Why are you even saying that?
Because I'm Jewish, man. I grew up in my own, like, it's like you want to joke about like everybody's Christian except that Jewish guy in that room. Like, yeah, they're probably still Jewish.
And I'm still going to go back again and say what I'm talking about is black, not Jewish, black.
I got that. I was a media member, though, and I'm giving you my best perspective. I grew up in a mixed faith, different type of mixed race family. I can only give the perspective of what I grew up in and then share it with who I've learned from, then I become friends with later in life, right? I've seen what they've gone through. I've seen people deal with different problems than I've dealt with, and then I just try to learn, grow, give advice and opportunity wherever I can.
If you wanted to share anything with our audience right now, and thank you for being here. If you wanted to share anything with our audience right now, as Paul Spady, Saul Spady, doing the things that you do, about blacks in sports, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to a minute here to share with our audience what that means to you and why you think it's important for your voice to be heard right now.
I don't think it's really about my voice. I think it's the things we all may know as non-black people. And again, speaking as a white person, I guess, or a Jewish person, or however you want to define me, it really is that there is an obvious problem when you look at it. There is inequity when it comes to gender or race all across society, including in sports. It's just really obvious in sports because the average age of the NFL owner is 69. And you just got to think about the 69-year-olds you know in your life. No insult to anybody who's 69, but you're just from a different era, and they struggle to do the right thing or to take risks, quote unquote, in hiring or to reach outside of their circles. And we all do that. And I would just encourage everybody to take more risks and be more diverse in who they hire and why they hire them.
Thank you. So all voices are welcome. Do we have anybody on StreamYard, Daniel? Who was it?
Troy and Corey.
Okay, Corey's still there. And Floyd?
Troy.
Oh, Troy. They're still there. We're working this out. We're a community radio station, okay? Expect us to make mistakes. That's what we do. We bring people in for opportunities. I'm not going to do an infomercial, but we have over 80 volunteers from our community that either produce or host shows on this radio station, and we continually bring in new people. So,
and that's what makes a Rainier Avenue Radio special. Yeah. And we have, all kidding aside, I mean, you know, and so
we're going to end up having to wrap this up. So I'm going to want to talk to everybody again. But Steve, I did want to get back to you. And again, you were a different person, okay, from being around, and I was in the locker room.
I've been told that before.
And I've been with sports writers, and but so I know what you're saying when the guys talk to you, because I talk to you, you know, and part of the comfort level I had was because I didn't feel as though you were judging me. How did you grow up? Where are you from? What was your?
Well, I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, and you know, it's kind of right on the cusp, Mason-Dixon line. North Delaware fought for the blue, and Southern Delaware fought for the gold. So I kind of had a mixed bringing up. My father owned an Eastern Basketball League team, the Wilmington Blue Bombers, who were kind of a precursor to the G League and everything that came after that. And all of the players, 89% of the players were black. And I think I was in 8th and 9th grade, and I went to every practice. I was a pain in the neck in the locker room and ball boy and all that stuff. And it was really my first experience with black players. And I mean, they were great to me. They treated me well. On Sunday mornings, after church, we would go to Howard Johnson's for breakfast. In back of the Howard Johnson's was a motel where the players stayed in. My father called them, and Howard Johnson's was all white at that time. My father called them in and said, "Come on over and have breakfast." So 10 6'10" black men walk into the Howard Johnson's, and you know, heads turn, and like, where are they going? And they sat at our table, and it was every Sunday when they had home games, they came and ate with us. And I mean, it was great for me. A couple of the guys would come to my games, my high school games, and say, "You got to shoot more," which would have gotten me off the team in a blink. But I mean, they were so great to me. But more, it was just watching over the 10 weeks that they came in, the transformation of the people in the restaurant. Because on Sundays it was the same people in the same booths every Sunday, and you know, after a couple times, there's like, "Hey, these guys are great guys." So that was my first experience. And my dad always had a lot of black friends, and I was in that kind of a group. So they were just guys who were hanging out with us.
So what he's saying, man, he was comfortable with the brothers. Don't break it down.
Well, really, I could have either been comfortable or scared to death.
Or scared to death. Hey, Tony, I want to say this real quick. I know.
So I have a show Monday Night Sports, and
I'm gonna get to that. We got 3 minutes left.
I've never been invited.
I'm gonna get. Let Steve finish. You got to get the white guy off.
No. But Steve made a point, and we'll continue the conversation. We talked about black coaches and the fact that you look at William Smith got the job. Black coaches come in, they get crappy jobs, with crappy teams, and so that's.
I'm gonna get you in a second.
Yeah,
Steve. I want to give you the same opportunity here. Let's do this. And watching Steve Kellie. Blacks in sports. What would you like people who are watching right now to leave here with from you? And it doesn't have to be anything prophetic. Again, everybody has their own experience. You are a phenomenal sports writer for the Seattle Times, maybe the best, and you covered our beloved Seattle Sonics. What do you want to share with people from your insight, from your perspective, when I say blacks in sports, whatever that may be?
Well, I would like to say it's athletes in sports, but we can't. We have to say blacks in sports because there's still so much progress to be made. And I mean, the first name that comes to me is Colin Kaepernick. I mean, it was criminal, literally criminal, what they did to him. The collusion that was involved and never giving him a job again. And, you talk about Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Well, Muhammad Ali was kicked. He had to give up his belts because he didn't want to go to Vietnam. He got back in the ring, he got back in the public eye, and he lit the torch in the '96 Olympics in Atlanta. And the same with Kareem. Kareem, he wasn't well liked as an NBA player, but he still had a platform because he was an NBA player, and he used it, and he continues to use it. Those are two great Americans. Colin Kaepernick never got to play again, never had that platform again, and never got to defend himself. And he was a Super Bowl quarterback. I'm an Eagles fan, and it just bugged me so much that they had a playoff game against the Seahawks, and Carson Wentz was hurt, which is, not a news story. And they had Josh McCown, 42-year-old. He had a walker. He had to actually come on the field with a walker. He was the quarterback. And Colin Kaepernick was out there. They had a Super Bowl quarterback who was there to play, and they didn't call him. Unbelievable.
Thank you, Steve. Steve Kellie. And Rick, and so I'm the time cop, okay? I have to make this thing go. We're already over time, but I'm going to give everybody the same amount of time that I just gave to Steve to do this. So same thing, Rick, for you. What do you want those who are listening, watching, to get from you on a show called Blacks in Sports? What do you want folks to know?
I think when I think blacks in sports, I think of the sacrifices that so many of these black men and women have had to make. And Steve talked about Colin Kaepernick, and we can talk more about him. But here's a guy who literally graduated from college as a 4.0 student. I mean, he was, a brilliant dude and a phenomenal athlete, and was blackballed. He took a stand, and he took one for the team, so to speak. And as I said earlier, Brian Flores, same thing. Knowing that that's career suicide, but saying this has to be done if we're going to make progress. So when I think of blacks in sports, I look at was it 70% of the NFL players are black, and the impact that black men and women have made on sports, and the impact that black people make on our society is incredible. And so when I think of blacks in sports, I have a lot of pride. I have a lot of celebration in me, because we've done some great things and accomplished some great things, but there's so much more work to be done. And I hear what Steve is saying about it would be great if we could just say athletes, but if you don't recognize my blackness, then you miss something of me. And Tony, as you were talking about that experience that we bring to the table, I think about my dad, who was born in 1920 in Montgomery, Alabama, and what he had to experience in his lifetime that shaped who he was and what he shared with us that helped shape who I am. And I don't want anyone to overlook that and not recognize what I've gone through. Getting on an elevator and a woman getting off, or getting on an elevator and a woman not wanting to get on because I'm there, or things like that. Those are things I've experienced. So again, long rambling answer a little bit, but I think really important as we think of blacks in sports, we think about pride of what we have accomplished, but man, there's so much more work to be done, and gratitude for those that have come before us and laid the groundwork.
Mr. Rick DuPree, 6:30 every Monday. Go ahead.
Yes, 6:30 Monday night sports, and I want to. And Steve, I'll say it here. Steve and I have known each other for years, and like you, Tony and Anthony, great respect for him. Would love to get you on because Steve and I, before we came on the stage, were talking about the opportunity or lack thereof, or what they're like. And white coaches oftentimes are recycled. Brothers, you get one shot, one and done. And in our lifetime, and Tony, you and I have talked about, in our lifetime, the first black head football coach at the University of Washington, the first black basketball coach at the University of Washington, in our lifetime. That's crazy. We're talking about first still in our lifetime. So.
Corey, are you still there, Corey? Troy, are you still there, Troy?
I'm still here listening.
Troy Miles, all right.
Ricky, Anthony.
Final words from you, Troy. So the same thing. Thank you for joining us, first of all. Appreciate you being here and sharing your perspective, your personal perspective. What, Troy, would you like to share with our audience from your perspective when they leave this show entitled Blacks in Sports? What do you want them to leave with?
Well, just the understanding that there's so much that goes into when you see the black athlete as the representation as a superhero. There's so many other things that they're dealing with, so many other things that, we have to get to the root of why these things are happening, I think. But I think that when you see that superhero athlete, you're looking at someone who's accomplished things and had to go through a circuitous route to get to that place. But at the same time, I can also want you to understand that, when you look at the sports holistically, you think of the opportunity that happen when the playing days are over, or when the eligibility is up. If you look at the college situation, where you have in most situations, most of the coaches are white, and a lot of the people doing the playing are black, and then you have those non-scholarship athletes at the end of the bench. So a lot of times we call it in basketball the environment sandwich. And you have those, once your eligibility is up as an athlete, then your opportunities aren't the same. And, some of those kids at the end of the bench who were walk-ons, now they leapfrog you into, grad assistant positions and into the administration of sports. And so we look for the same type of opportunities. If we're excellent on the field of play, then those types of skill sets are still with us, and we still have those things available, and we want to plug in, and we should be able to plug in organically to the broader scope of sports. And so that's what the most important thing is to me, is that it's twofold. You have you see the athlete as a superhero, but it doesn't stop once their playing days are over. That's still that individual who put themselves in the position to be the top in their field. And so that shouldn't change, but we have to look at the critical things. We talk about Colin Kaepernick. When we watched that special, and I'm sure most of us did on Colin Kaepernick, the very first thing he talked about or he presented was the baby doll study. Because mindsets are programmed at a very early age. And when we say that there's hurdles to jump through as Black Americans, it doesn't mean that there's not hurdles for everyone else. It just means that, there's certain presets that people are bringing to situations that negatively impact other people. And it's not necessarily malicious, people being comfortable. I think it's okay to be able to, be comfortable with your decision making. But because of some of the things structurally, those end up being inequities that may not be on purpose, but still have the same impact. So I'm rambling just like Rick said, but the main thing is that, if you can bask in the glory and appreciate the prowess of the athlete on the field, then look at that same individual as having that type of capacity or potential in anything else, and not to and be aware that there are limitations and barriers that may happen unconsciously, that are because most of the time decisions that negatively impact us aren't malicious. I was having a conversation with Juan. This is the last thing I'm going to say. I was having a conversation with Juan the other day, and we were talking, and it's, our society has progressed. It has come a ways, because you're really not being penalized, overtly for being Black anymore. I don't believe that. But you're still being penalized for not being white on the low. And it's not, maybe not be intentional, but that's still a reality. You're not being penalized for being Black, but it may be because you're not white, and that's tough.
Well, you are one of the few people who's not penalized for being Black. I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that, but I appreciate your opinion, because we all are not penalized.
Well, no, I'm definitely not saying haven't been penalized for being Black, but I'm saying as a society, we've come to a place where it's not necessarily people are going to look at you and say you're not going to be able to gain entry because you're Black, but because you're not white, you're going to be looked at and judged in ways that are going to negatively impact you, is what I'm saying. Because I'm definitely not saying that I haven't been impacted because I was Black, but I think that I don't ever feel like I can be defeated, but that's not the point. But the point is, sometimes, people just make decisions about us because, we're not white.
I'm gonna have to get on to my next guest, Troy, and don't consider me to be rude, because we can have a philosophical conversation about this and that. But I wanted to stick to and I certainly appreciated your comments. I'm already over time.
I appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you, my man. Juan, I'm going to end up with you. Anthony, I want to give you the same opportunity for final words here. Again, if there are things that you want people to know from you and your experience, because you've had a rare journey through sports that you would like people to know.
I'll try and be brief here. And obviously, for playing with Doug back in the '87 Super Bowl and being obviously the MVP of the Super Bowl and the first Black quarterback to win the Super Bowl, I'm not going to say anything about what's been said, because I think that's more than it's been covered, the Black athlete in sports. But I will just point this out, that something to think about. I think 3 years ago, the Black quarterback really shook up some of the owners in the NFL. That 3 years ago, the year Lamar Jackson won the MVP and led the league in touchdown passes. And that same season, Jameis Winston was second with touchdown passes. And in the NFC and AFC championship game, he had 3 out of 4 Black quarterbacks. Really, I don't think they have no idea. They do not want to see 2 Black quarterbacks in a Super Bowl. And the biggest single person in the NFL is who? The quarterback. Preferably the white quarterback. And it's just, and ever since then, Jameis Winston threw for 5,000 yards, 33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. Got benched the next year, got fired the next year, got traded to another team, and was ridiculed on the radio every day that if anybody starts this, not necessarily a Black man at quarterback, is suicide. And you name any quarterback ever in the history of the NFL, and there's been 9 of them that threw for 5,000 yards, never, ever lost their job. But he did. That same season, Phillip Rivers threw for 4,600 yards, 23 touchdowns, 20 interceptions. Went to another team, got a starting job, and a $20 million contract. So when you're saying Blacks in sports, Yes, the quarterback made great strides that year, but ever since then, it's been dwindling, getting less and less. Less and less by quarterbacks. I won't say less opportunities, but it's just they really scared the owners, I believe, 3 years ago. And I think the black quarterback will pay a price for that in the next few years. That's just something to think about.
Blacklash. Kellie, I want to give you a chance. Coach Al, I got to talk to you. You are a legend in this community, and I want to hear some final words from you. But let me, because I want you, Kellie, would you go first so I can let Mr. Roberts? Kellie, thank you for being here, first of all, and coming. And again, the same thing, anything that you, from your perspective, would just like to share with those who are watching and listening right now that you want people to hear from you about this conversation.
I think we've got a long way to go. I think that we just have a long way to go in sport to make it equitable. I think that we've got a long way to go to bring some parity between the uniform personnel on the field and the equity in personnel in the front office, and really giving Black athletes, Black people opportunities to coach, to work in sport, and make an impact.
Thank you. Thank you. And Coach Al Roberts.
For me, it's really, really too simple. It really is simple. And I coach like this too. For me, all you have to do is love people and be inclusive. When I say love people, I'm talking about collaboration, cooperation, relationship, connection, and be inclusive. Be inclusive. You got a whole world of people here. Use all of them. And if you work with those two things right there, you don't have a problem at all. The problem you'll have is if you're not inclusive. The problem is you have this if you don't love everyone. Those are the problems. So whenever you have problems, all during the session tonight, you're talking about people not loving, not including.
Thank you, Coach. And Mr. Juan Cotto. So I want everybody out there who's enjoyed this to give Juan Cotto a round of applause. He put this amazing panel together.
Tony, I just want to recognize and I want to apologize to Kaleb Germinaro, who is here with us this evening, and he's had a very interesting perspective. He's referred to me by a gentleman by the name of Polo DeCano, that he's working on his sports management degree, and he's got just an amazing perspective, and I wish we could have got to him to share tonight. I also want to say that thank you and apologize to Scott Laigo, who's done wonderful things in this community, teaching kids about sports as they're pursuing opportunities for scholarships and so forth, working with parents and working with students. Also want to thank Hugh Wyatt. I've gone to so many coaching clinics where I've seen the likes of Anthony Allen, some of these guys in coaching high school football. Coach Wyatt does a number of programs. He knows more about the history of Black coaches from all of the legendary coaches in the Black schools, the HBCU schools. And he was going to give us a little bit of that tonight, and we didn't get to him, but he would have been remarkable. And the first thing that obviously went
and Will Sanchez was on with us too.
Will Sanchez also, who worked at Madison Square Garden, was talking about the inequities in the media and different things he experienced and his experience chasing that dream. But when I was thinking about Brian Flores last week, the first thing that went to my mind was former Washington State star, Garfield High School head football coach Derek Sparks, who passed away from cancer about a month and a half ago. And I was thinking about Derek and the impact that he had on this community and working with kids and working with kids in homeless situations and the things that we face as inner city high school football coaches, which Anthony Allen can attest to. So may Derek Sparks rest in peace, and my thoughts and prayers are with him and his family this evening as we continue to have these conversations. And as Kellie referenced, we have more work to do. Thank you, Tony.
Well, no, we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Juan, what do you, what did, you and I, this came together very quickly, like within 2 or 3 days. And I knew that you would make it what it was, Juan. What is it for you that you wanted people to get out of this conversation? And thank you for putting together a well-rounded staff. Well-rounded group of panelists. All of them we weren't able to get to, but that's instead of not having enough people on the panel, we had a bunch of folks step up and say they wanted to be part of this. And what do you want people to know? What were you looking for the listener to get from this particular Black History Month celebration and education?
I think you touched on it, Tony, was the history from the Black perspective. I heard a number of comments from NFL players this week in reference to the Brian Flores situation. And what they have said is that, this is just an obvious situation. We know what's going on. We know what's going on. It's clear. And so I think that certainly the issue has been defined. It has been spoken about, certainly, and given a lot of attention this last week. Obviously, the results are in, and with these most recent coaching vacancies, just in the last couple of days, there's been a former Black head coach who is now a Black head coach today. And then yesterday it was announced that the head coach that is taking over in Miami is from a multicultural background, but there was no information given on his parents or his racial identity. So the situation still exists in America, and I think this is a situation that goes not only in professional sports, but also in the corporate world, also in the management of nonprofit organizations. And I think that we see that sometimes very, very clearly within our own community here in Seattle. And it takes certain situations like this to bring it to the surface. And hopefully we will touch on it not only in coaching, but in areas such as tech, where you're seeing just a very, very small population of African Americans. When they do work at Microsoft, for example, they are working at the retail store, for example. And I don't think that's good enough. And we're seeing it in the life sciences. And I would like to create more opportunities and pathways, which I've done for the last 15 years of my career. And you've also helped me with that, Tony, to give people an opportunity to pursue careers in the life sciences as doctors and as researchers. And we still have a long way to go in so many of these different fields. And I think what Troy touched on in terms of it's something that begins at the very beginning of your life and how you are cultivated and how you are nurtured and given the mindset that you can achieve in these areas. And that's what I'm hoping that this conversation with Brian Flores and the lack of opportunities and the lack of the process for Black coaches will give us today.
All right, I'm going to end this really quickly with a big what if. Juan and I were talking, and Juan brought this up, and I'll give you maybe 20 seconds, Juan, to say this what if. The what if was what if Jackie Robinson had not gone to the major leagues and the Negro Leagues had thrived with the Black owners, the Black people who were controlling everything about the Negro. Just go ahead really quickly, just that what if.
The fourth point that we want to talk tonight, and like you said, what if was integration. And obviously Jackie Robinson and him going into Major League Baseball really changed the trajectory of those leagues and of those opportunities. And it would be interesting, but would our country be better? Would the relationships be better? Would we be whole as a society? I don't know if we would have been, and I don't know with the success of the Negro Leagues over time. But I will say this, that those businesses obviously had the opportunities for people, and they were thriving. They were giving people the opportunity to be coaches, managers, players, and general managers. And they certainly did. They certainly did leave a void when they went away.
I'm just saying. What if? Thank you for listening to Rainier Avenue Radio and our special broadcast of Blacks in Sports in celebration and education of Black history right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. Big thanks, Juan, who is one of our broadcasters. You can hear him doing play-by-play or commentary. Baseball season, you'll be hearing lots of Juan doing baseball. I got to do a shameless plug for Rainier Avenue Radio. Thanks, Juan. And Rick DuPree, again, same deal. This guy was working with Bob Blackburn and doing broadcasting on KGR when no one was thinking. You still have to say first so many times. But you can hear Rick doing play-by-play, doing commentary. He's got his own show every Monday night at 6:30. I'm just saying this is the talent that we have, that is around us, that is overlooked. And so that's why we exist. Thanks, Anthony, for everything that you do, man. Most of all, at least from my perspective, I know you're a phenomenal athlete, some say best in the city, but for being a good human being, And Steve, thank you, man. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but we're going to be hearing you on our high school basketball broadcast.
I've talked to my agent. Disappointed with the pay. I would love to do it.
We'll triple the pay.
Well, there you go. 3 times 0.
Well, that's what he told me as well. Triple the pay.
And again, Kellie, thank you very much. Saul, thank you for being here. Are you mad at me? Don't be mad at me, man. Okay. You never know with white people. Sometimes white people don't like to be, put on the spot. Like, hey, back off me, man. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry we didn't get you up and get the whole thing, so I kind of put you on the hot seat a little bit. And Coach Roberts, my man, hopefully we're going to see you. I'm just saying, I know you coach, but man, if we can get you to come to some of our high school football games, that'd be awesome. And you were here to be on the air, right? And I did not know that, and I apologize. It's me, Tony B, and on behalf of everyone here, including Juan Cotto, thank you for listening to us. That's it. That's all the time we have. As a matter of fact, we're overtime. I believe you can't. You are probably right.